What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Wallet Monkey channel, where we give you all the credit intel you need to grow your wallet. Today, we're going to kind of sneak in a topic in here that most people don't like, which is macro, and we're going to talk about the CPI or the inflation numbers that we're seeing, right? And the reason why this is important is because this is a personal finance channel, and inflation is wildly important to give us an indication of what interest rates are looking like, prime rates are looking like, etc., etc. So inflation is running pretty rampant right now. And we've talked about previously the different models that exist. Well, even the model that we're looking at right now, most people don't know this, but in January of 2022, they changed again to just be a 12-month rolling average. Now, I don't know if they thought that would smooth out the data, make it look better, but it's actually made the data look worse. So this is 12 months now of data that you're seeing in the current CPI numbers, which is 8.5%, okay? So here is the 12-month unadjusted numbers, meaning the increase over the last 12 months. And you see some pretty high numbers. For example, fuel oil, 70%, gasoline, 48%, energy in general, 32%, food at home, 10%, energy commodities, 11%, 35% on used cars and trucks, 6.8% on apparel, shelters up 5%, which is, that accounts for about 33% of this index. Understand that this is an index, and so it's a bunch of numbers that that account for this, right? Like energy and food account for, I think, like 21%. Then we've got other metrics that are taken into consideration here. So I'm sure you could look up what exactly the pie chart is and how this all breaks down. Personally, I don't really care. It's just going to give you a piece of the puzzle, right? So we've shared the 1980s CPI model with you before. Interestingly enough, is where we're at reminds me a lot of the 1980s. Is I wasn't going through that economically myself, but going back and researching that quite a bit, looking at the current interest rates that we are at, based off the 1980 model, we're at about the same inflation rate we were at back then. So interesting, right? And there's some other corollaries and similarities as well. But so anyways, we're at about 16% on that model. And then there's a third model, which is by Penn State University. And that model takes, it looks at housing a little bit different. And that is showing about 10% right now. So, you know, you be the judge. Does it really matter? 1.5% really matter? Even 5-6% in this case? Probably not, because the pain is being felt on the ground. You know, when you go to the store and what $100 used to get you is now half that. You already know that this number doesn't really represent something real in your life. Now, this does correlate to prime interest rate going up and other things like that going up, right? Credit card companies, lenders in general, tightening up, loosening up. That's what these metrics are really for, right? So anyways, that's a look directly at the Bureau of Labor Statistics site. Now let me share some other data with you. It's interesting to look back in time because things move so fast now, it's easy to forget what we were being told just not too long ago. I remember when interest rates when inflation started going up, I would even say it was before October. There's like a 3-month period where it's like everyone from Jerome Powell, who's the Federal Reserve president, all the way to the White House correspondent to mainstream media was telling us, oh, it's just transitory. Meaning, and again, that's even a fancy term. Just say it's not going to last. It's going to go away. So, but they couldn't even say that. They had to use, like, they always got to use this fancy verbiage, right, to make you feel stupid. So anyways, then it was greedy corporations. Then we tap back into supply chain issues, bottlenecks, etc. Going on. And then it was oil prices because the war started with Ukraine and Russia. And now it's Putin price hike. None of this is real. This was all coming. From March of 2020, that recession only lasted 2 months. It's the shortest recession in the history of historical data that we've got. So we all knew that wasn't going to last. And if you did, I'm sorry that you fell for that. But having a 2-month recession doesn't really like purify the system and doesn't really clean things out and bring them back down to a normal status, right? The stock market is overextended by about 20 to 21 years, meaning that you're not going to get a return for about 20 to 21 years right now, depending on what you're looking at. I'm basing that off of the Shiller index, the Shiller PE ratio, and a couple other indexes. So things are still very, very inflated right now, right? And you're feeling that on the ground. So this was always going to be an outcome. To blame it on somebody else, like, it's just kind of weird. we've all probably got that friend where they're constantly blaming somebody else for everything that happens to them, right? It's always somebody else's fault. And that's fine because that's like your friend or somebody you know, but it's not fine when it's somebody that's running a country or the president that's supposed to be, taking the bull by the horns and handling these things head on. You don't really want to see that with that guy or woman, right? So anyways, we covered all this. Shelter, like I said, represents 33% of the index. So understand that that's why, part of the reason why it's up is because shelter is so high. But if they were to change this, and this is what I don't like, if they were to all of a sudden change the weightedness of the index, then they could just make this look good and everything goes away magically. So that's why this index doesn't really make sense. To look at the raw data of each individual category would actually be more beneficial. I understand most people don't want to do that. So anyways, that's why we shoot videos like this, right? So rents are up 17% over the last year and home prices are up 19%. There is a little bit of silver lining in this. Used vehicles, like I said, up 38%, but over the last month, they fell 3.8%, and there are 2 months now in a row that prices have fallen. This is the chart right here. It looks like this might have topped. So used vehicles might have topped, which is good. That's a good sign. I mentioned earlier about the Penn State Alt Rent Index. They are not taking into consideration the owner's equivalent rent that the BLS uses, and they're looking at different metrics. Also keep in mind that they don't use NAR housing data in the housing data. That is the National Association of Realtors. They don't take that data into consideration in CPI. Interesting, right? So anyways, what I wanted to wrap up with is, as with anything, data can be skewed any which way you want it to look like. So inflation, this dotted line right here is when Biden took office. So if I wanted to be political or get involved in the right and left, flinging poop at each other, I could easily do that. Or you could just reshare this and say, oh, look what Biden's done for us, right? And so people tend to just point the finger at the president, and I understand why, because he's the one representing all this. He's the one representing you. The current administration should be the one working the hardest for you. That's how it used to be. That being said, let's be fair here, is every president spends more than the last president. Every president walks into a higher debt level than the previous president. So you can say that and make the corollary that every president is walking into a bigger disaster than the last one. So it's a tough job that they walk into. That's why nobody wants to do it, because there's a lot to be fixed. I mean, they want you to manage your checkbook, but the Pentagon and a lot of other governing bodies can't even balance their own checkbooks, and they couldn't even tell you where all the money goes, right? So government is a horrible spender of cash. That's why things like higher taxes that go to the government, et cetera, are bad, because the private sector, believe it or not, is better at spending money, usually, than the government. The government, we know, is like horrible. That's like giving an addict more, right? That's the worst option. So anyway, quick look at CPI, inflation. Is this just gonna turn around and stop on a dime and just drop? No, it's gonna take some time to shake this out. And the Fed doesn't really have a lot of ammunition. They don't have a lot of options. They can continue to raise interest rates, which makes servicing the debt that much harder because it makes it that much more expensive, or they can just hold on tight, stick with the regular base point jumps that they have planned and that they usually stick to, and which is like a 25 or 50 point base jump, and let this thing kind of shake itself out and see what happens. Or like I said, they can aggressively raise rates to cut back down. They can introduce QT, which is quantitative tightening. Quantitative easing is printing money. Quantitative tightening is getting rid of money or burning money, essentially. They could introduce that while raising rates to try and, again, head this off. But listening to them talk, a lot of like the Fed presidents, you can tell that they don't realize how behind they are right now. They are about 8 or 9 interest rate hikes behind. And so what that means is they are really behind the ball on what needs to occur to kind of levelize and normalize the equations here. So anyways, I just want you guys to know this stuff because it's important when you're going out there with the credit game and with your personal finances, is because we're trying to grow our wealth, right? We are trying to set ourselves up for the future. And it's important to understand just how much of that is being chipped away while you're trying to build it. And inflation is a hidden tax. Inflation chips away at that. Taxes chip away at that. Interest rates chip away at that, right? So the more you know, the better you'll be able to prepare yourself. If you got something to say, comment below, or if you just want to help us with the algorithms, hit the like button. And if you're brand new to this sort of thing and you like it, then stick around. Hit the subscribe button, the bell notification, turn it to all, and be on the lookout for more videos coming soon. See ya.